Wonderful. Well, good morning, everyone. And we're delighted to be sharing with you today in this presentation an overview of our recently published report, New Codes of Luxury in Saudi Arabia, which has been written by our team of researchers, analysts, and writers at the Future Laboratory in London.
We'd like to thank the Together Group, of course, for sponsoring the report. We have Christian and Ada here with us today, and also just for making it possible for us to visit Riyadh. You know, if you think about cities that you imagine are representing the future, and you think maybe you will never get to them, and then somebody comes along and says, Martin, we're going to get you a ticket to get you out and see this new world being made. So thank you both for allowing my dream to happen.
Indeed. And we'd also like to thank the team at the bench, to Jennifer and her colleagues, for inviting us to be with you here today.
Okay, so just think about the kind of things we're going to see in the report. You know, we're going to be looking at the future of global trends. We're going to be looking at local luxury and hospitality trends, but then also looking at and listening to insights from 17 insider experts. So not people who are looking in, but people who are inside looking out, telling us what's happening.
So the report is going to be available for everyone to download. At the end of this presentation, we'll be putting a QR code up on screen. Now, as well as 17 experts who are based here in Saudi that we spoke to, specialists in luxury across all sectors of the luxury lifestyle industry, we also used FuturePoll, which is our statistical data analysis division at the Future Laboratory. And in order to really get under the skin of how luxury continues to grow here in Saudi Arabia, we polled 500 adults over the age of 18 based here in Saudi Arabia with a minimum household income of $130,000 in order to really understand how they perceive luxury, what they want from luxury, and how their engagement with luxury brands and organizations continues to evolve. Now, just a little bit of word about the Future Laboratory to help you understand who it is and what we do. We're a research intelligence business that looks at strategic foresight across the lifestyle industries, and our methodology plays a crucial role in offering context to the valuable insights that we acquire.
So simply put, if you look at the graphic here, we analyze what we're calling the key human needs. You see that at the center of our, what we call our onion cycle here. Then you're mapping that against global drivers. So two things. One are the needs against the drivers. So cultural, technological, environmental, social, political. And then you're doing that against what's happening in the world and how that will affect tomorrow. So a lot of things happening behind the scenes that are beginning to tell us what's happening or what will happen over the next decade.
And it's by understanding these drivers that we can identify new ways in which we as businesses, as brands, strive to meet these human needs within a more contemporary context. So these are manifest as cultural macro trends, those large trends that take 3 to 5 years to grow and develop and to move their way across a consumer society, but also those micro trends, those things that come upon us much, much quicker and maybe take 18 months to 3 years to develop and really take hold within a marketplace. And of course, that helps us to really understand what's going on in emerging specific lifestyle categories within the short term, such as luxury and hospitality.
Indeed. So, okay, so for the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to be providing you with some of the key insights about the current Saudi market. So what's happening now?
We're going to take a look at an examination of the consumer mindsets that really are shaping luxury experiences here in the kingdom.
But also the innovations and trends that are likely to come next as a consequence of these changes.
Now, obviously, we've only got 25 minutes with you. The report goes into this material in much more depth, so I really do invite you to download the code and download the report at the end of this presentation so that you can really start to understand what the research can show you and help to guide you in more detail. But with this approach, our aim is to offer you an in-depth understanding of luxury and hospitality here in contemporary Saudi Arabia. Because as we can see, and as I'm sure we're all already aware, this market is brimming with opportunities, and yet it is still woefully misunderstood, especially from the point of those externally leaning in. And that's one of the key issues that we try and challenge in our report.
Okay, so just think about, everybody talks about Vision 2030, but what is it trying to do? So 1, enhancing the Saudi private sector. 2, driving entrepreneurship, a key issue here. Diversifying the economy, and of course investing in ways for Saudi to become a key global trade and innovation hub. Core to that shift is, of course, the area of tourism, which is vital to any country that is going to boomerang into the next stage of what we're calling social and hospitable collaboration and development.
Now, as we've said, we spoke to, in depth, over 17 experts based here in Saudi who really understand what's going on in luxury specifically, but also in hospitality in general. And one of those experts that we spoke to, you've already heard the company named already, was the CEO of the experience agency Cool Inc., Sinan Al-Sadi. And he told us there is the opportunity to develop Saudi as a cultural destination, but it will take time. We're trying to build everything. Over time, we're going to show people what Saudi luxury truly is. And I think it's this sense already that there's an understanding that this is a process. This is not a quick journey. That there is a vision to do this, yes, at speed, but also to consider the length and the legacy involved is something we want to come to later in this presentation.
Yeah, if you look at these two figures here, look, 15 billion, that's going to be the value of the market. That's what it's been looking at. But look down here, the compound annual growth rate will be 11.6, which is phenomenal. But hang on, look at down here. America, which used to lead the luxury sector, its predicted growth rate is 2.1%. So Saudi already, without doing too much, is absolutely outflanking, outstripping, and outperforming against one of the key markets where we look to be a luxury leader. Wow. I'll be applauding that if I was about to open a business here.
Okay, keep the applause coming, because our second market driver, look at this, is our female focus. What we see, of course, is the continued growth of a female entrepreneur landscape here in Saudi Arabia, and it is evolving rapidly. So let's have some more statistics about what's going on with female entrepreneurs. Well, in 2021 alone, the country issued an impressive 140,000 commercial licenses to women, reflecting one of the highest growth rates on record. Now, just to give you some sense of comparison, in the United Kingdom, not Saudi, but in the United Kingdom, in the UK, 160,000 licenses were created last year. Yep. So the kingdom is already well on its way of catching up.
But think about this. In Saudi, 45% of SMEs are run by women. Okay? What do you think the figure is for the UK, the other kingdom? If I told you 30%? See? That's the reality of what I call the preconception of a market and how the market challenges that preconception.
Well, why is this important? Well, it's important because when we think about the future of the hospitality industry here, and as more women become entrepreneurs and business owners and leaders, we're predicting a rise in the services and the products that are going to serve them as their primary consumer, not us men. So we're talking about the rise in boutique hotels, in female-centric well-being centers, and the need for hospitality ventures and venues that cater specifically to their needs and to their preferences.
Okay, and the third thing, what we're calling local investment. So look at that figure there. As much as 1.2 trillion, which is what is sitting in the development pipeline, that's what the value is going to be. We're going to see 150 million tourists per year coming into Saudi. But what are they coming for? It's going to be wellness, well-being, and longevity. That third thing everybody is talking about. Why is that important? Think about brand Dubai. What does it represent? Partying. What is brand Saudi focusing on? Well, well-being and recovery. And a friend said to me recently, well, I leave London to recover from London. I go to Dubai to enjoy my recovery from London, but then I leave Dubai and go to Saudi to recover from Dubai. So what we're beginning to see is how we're beginning to create brands across the region that will have relevance and importance and focus, because the tourist is going to come to a brand as well as coming to a culture. So we need to think about how we're dividing these things up.
Indeed. And one of the key insights we got from our experts was just how clearly and marked is the difference of what's going on in this market, how we are seeing this focus on high-end innovation, on enterprise, on well-being related to creating experience. And we're going to come back to that word in a moment. A very different kind of luxury to the one that Martin has just mentioned that we see, for example, in other countries in the region. So, as Saudi continues to open itself up, what we're really seeing is also the development of a whole new set of contemporary trends, which are really beginning to flourish. So in order to unpack those in a little bit more detail, we're going to start to look at what our report told us about the Saudi mindset when it comes to engagement with luxury, a luxury lifestyle, and of course, importantly, that luxury spend. So much of this, of course, in terms of this shift of cultural mindset and consumer engagement is based to the ongoing trickle-down effect that we begin to see, of course, with visionary development, and also a radically reinvented infrastructure, which to the Saudis that I speak to is also continuing to take them by surprise by the speed at which it's being conducted, but also the growth, and this is always critical to the development of society, a new creative sector.
I mean, the value of that, and it was surprising, coming in on the plane from London, everybody was wearing black. Black shirts, black jackets. I thought, oh, they work in advertising, they work in marketing, they work in the creative classes. Why are they coming? Well, currently the industry is worth 20 billion, and it will employ 100,000 people by 2030. That's a massive explosion in an area that really was conceived 5 years ago. So again, we need to think about advancement in a way that we're just not seeing in other countries, even in the creative industries, which is a vital measure for how you look at the gross happiness levels or competitive levels of a particular country or city.
Okay, let's start to explore these mindset shifts in a little bit more detail.
So, first one here is hyper-personalization. If you're working in hospitality, the big focus will be on how you engage with the marketplace. 17% used to be how much luxury was worth. Now there are 27% of high net worth luxurians in Saudi currently. But what are they looking for? They are thinking about, well, hyper-personalization. They are thinking about individuality. They're also thinking about how they are looking for increased levels of discernment. One of our interviewees, Prince Bandar, explains why this is the case.
Well, when we interviewed His Highness Prince Bandar, he said to us, Saudi consumers are very sophisticated, well-educated, and have been traveling for a long time. They have deep knowledge of brands and services in luxury and other sectors because of their exposure to the world.
Yeah, 90%, 90% told us that they believed personalization was one of the single things they would like to find most in a conversation or an engagement about luxury, compared to 50%, 60%, 40% in European countries. So if the thing is not individual, like a thumbprint mark, you will have a problem speaking to your local client.
So personalization, both online and offline. So what does this mean for us as hospitality brands? Well, critically, it's that we need to spend as much time focusing on the consumer, the customer, the guest experience and journey as we do on the hardware that we create and that we invest in. We've got to start to think about how we meticulously craft customer journeys from before they arrive at our property all the way through a stay and continuing on after they leave us. We have to continue to elevate our customer guest standards and provide unique benefits, as we've said, both on and offline. Next up is this idea of the transformation economy. Now, this may be a new expression to many of you. I'm sure you've all heard of the experience economy, this idea that Bain & Co. identified over 5 years ago now, that globally our luxury consumer invests more in luxury experiences than in traditional luxury product categories. That's the big shift that started to happen over a decade ago. What we now see is how that shift from experience is moving into this concept, this idea of transformation, which is this idea that the customer with money is choosing to proactively look for and search out the goods, the products, the brands, the organizations that better reflect their sense of self and their lifestyle and their life. And they're looking for those brands that can help them on their personal journey to become healthier, wealthier, and happier.
Yeah.
It's this journey of self-actualization that we see in our consumer journeys, this desire to transform, to become somebody else. And that's one of the critical things that we start to see. Now, this idea of the transformation economy is global, it's still nascent, but already here in Saudi Arabia, we see how it is quietly altering the luxury landscape and how affluent consumers are embracing new metrics that value personal well-being, emotional fulfillment, and social good over the idea of economic growth for the first time.
Good. You know, if you ask a lot of people what luxury means to them, they could say status, they could mean it's something to do with relative worth and value. In our survey, 60% of people in Saudi said that they equated luxury with well-being. So if you think about that, that's an intangible concept. It's not a physical characteristic I can drop on my foot. So how in the hospitality industry do you start living up to the expectation when a lot of it will be about spirit, a lot of it will be about mind, a lot of it will be about well-being in a completely different, it's not like a gym. It will be a place or a positioning that allow you to demonstrate relative luxury in relation to what I call the adjectives of living, not the facts.
Yeah.
Intangibility.
Let's be really clear that when we talk about well-being, we are not talking about
Spas.
We're not talking about scented candles and dimmed lights and a little bit of oil slathered all over somebody's back. That is not what well-being is all about. We are talking about a 360-degree holistic concept of mind, body, and spirit. Purpose that drives forward how we are reinventing what hospitality really reflects as an industry rather than how we see it portrayed by individuals when we welcome people into our own homes.
I mean, it was interesting. On Saturday, we went to Diriyah for the Biennale, and I met some families there, and I thought it'd be interesting to have a chat with them because, you know, the Biennale is quite a beautiful, extensive building with some of the great artworks from around the world and from Saudi. And I was saying to one dad with his daughter, you know, why are you here? And he said, for well-being. He had equated also cultural renewal and enhancement with the sense of well-being. So don't just assume it's a health issue. It is about art and culture, and it is about transforming people in a different way. So don't let the definition to be too narrow, because the people you're chatting to are not seeing it, as Chris said, in the relation to machines and gongs and incense.
Exactly. Yeah. And I thought this insight from Rosanna Chopra, the executive director at Red Sea Global, who was also one of our experts on our panel, the profile of adventure tourism has changed. Discovery is the key word. And when she chatted to me, it was really clear that by discovery, she was talking about both an internal and an external journey. We're not just talking about a geographic discovery of a new country. We're talking about that internal transformation and journey that we go through. And we're going to touch on this later when we look at the notion of awe. But let's consider our third mindset shift.
I mean, I need say very little about this except think youth. 44% of the Saudi population sits under 35.
And they represent 78% of your workforce.
I mean, that sort of says it all. So their sensibility, what they will be seeking out in terms of luxury, will be radically different. So, for example, when we looked at it, words like art, film, this is why Saudi has invested in great film festivals in the Biennale, why things like beauty and food, fashion, and fine dining all sat up high in how people were seeing. This is under 35.
Yeah, and indeed,
That's
according to our Future Poll research, 59% prioritise fine dining and gourmet experiences with a growing emphasis on Saudi-influenced dishes, architecture, and dining styles. Very important.
There's a quote here from Ada Renido. Have I got that right, Ada? Thank you. She keeps telling me off for getting her name wrong, rightly. This is what she said, and I think there's a really interesting clue here. It says, look, this is the time to be in Saudi. This is a metaphor and a reality. Without a doubt, Saudi Arabia today is a place for dreamers, and I think that's one of the things we see with the building, the architecture, the design, visionaries, because it's impossible to imagine. I don't think Saudi's become a bit like Venice. If you describe Venice to people, they go, it's impossible. Here, when I talk about some of the buildings and the Giga project, people go, that's just not reality.
Yeah.
And she said the other one is the builders. Builders both in the physical sense, but also in terms of the strategic and developmental sense.
And what's important here, of course, is that this isn't just about nation building. This is about the international opportunity, which again was clearly identified by one of our expert panelists, His Highness Prince Bandar, who said, in the next few years, you will see a lot of international companies that are Saudi-based, Saudi-created, and run by young Saudi men and women. Now, in our final section, we'd like to just look at some of the expert insights that we were able to gather and start to outline the themes of innovation that can be converted to create luxury experiences, destinations, and brands of tomorrow.
Core to that, and this is a term you will see quite a lot of, is the notion of concierge culture. So if we chatted to, or when we did our survey again, 91% of Saudi respondees told us that convenience is the key thing they look for in luxury investment. So that's not, again, common in other Western countries. When you ask people that question, why are they looking for it? Well, they're keen to go from time-saving efficiencies to optimizing living. So the convenience is done to give you time to do more gracious things. That was a phrase a person used, more gracious things. That's luxurious. So we're seeing a whole different mentality shift in what people are looking for. So think about membership clubs, private members clubs. I mean, we were shocked. You know, London is now full of private membership clubs. But what did we discover here when we dug into, well, interviewees and statistics?
Well,
Chris?
According to our Future Poll research, 66% of under 35-year-olds here in Saudi Arabia are members of at least one private club. That took us by surprise.
Pretty shocking, because when you think about what we're saying is that suddenly tailored views about service, about exclusivity, about one-to-one relationships become hugely important. And again, this is a quote from Prince Bandar, who's getting a lot of quotes today. He said, I want to be included at least 4 times. So he said, anybody who has money can build a beautiful hotel. Good point. Residents or even a restaurant. But at the end of the day, and this is the crucial bit, it's the service that will actually differentiate you. And service has got to be minute and precise and particular and defined, not per category, per person.
Yep.
That's a huge difference if you're trying to deliver service at that level.
Next opportunity, this idea that we've already started to delve into through the understanding of a transformation economy, is this idea of harnessing awe and wonder, because as the transformation economy starts to take hold, we're going to see how consumers and guests start to slow down and prioritize their essential self over their quantified self, this idea that we're not just thinking about the externals of life, all the pressures that we try and conform to, but instead we take the time to really evaluate that holistic 360 approach, mind, body, and spirit. And as a response, hospitality brands are going to need to serve as a kind of experiential medicine that helps individuals to come to a greater understanding of themselves, where we have those moments of perception, of clarity, of self-realization, which is what makes a stay in a beautiful hotel so valuable and so important.
You know, if you think about awe, and we talk about awe as it's kind of one of those adjectives we describe, something as awesome or whatever, but actually the science of awe has become fascinating. We're now measuring the brain's response to awe in a way that we can then rebuild back into the physical world what we would like that response to be. So when I show people pictures of key giga projects, they go, what? It's awesome. But there's actually a physical chemical being triggered,
Indeed.
as Chris will talk about. And the reason I mention that is, if we are seeing the focus in the market on culture, one of the key categories when you talk about awe, it's embedded in culture. You know, whether it's art, entertainment, singing, music, it creates those great moments of beauty and self-reflection. The same thing with health. The same thing with well-being. So think about those three pillars.
Yeah.
Suddenly we're seeing the gathering of opportunity under the title of this awesome moment.
But this isn't just about the external building of a giga project. It is not just about the hardware. It is about the software. It is about those small, intimate moments of care, of hospitality, of great service that we create. The layers of storytelling that we build into our properties, the calls to action that we make, the visual stimulation that we provide internally that delivers and that we must have so that the neuroscientists that Martin was talking about can work out that process that we all go through when we find ourselves in an awesome moment, which is the triggering of the brain's natural chemicals, the endorphins, the serotonins, and the dopamines that inspire awe. Next up is this idea of legacy recoded.
Yes, I think we talk about heritage. You know, all the time people discuss heritage. And if you go to places like Daria, for example, you are seeing the uncovering of great heritage. But we also need to think about legacy. Legacy is the future. It's what we leave behind us and how it matters.
Yep.
And increasingly, this is where the investment is going to. Made in Saudi, but not just made in Saudi. It's locally produced, locally thought, locally considered. So the next wave we're going to see is how Saudi brands are coalescing and changing the way we look at areas, for example, like beverage, like beauty. You know, if you think about beauty.
Yep. Well, this is already undeniably happening. According to our research for Future Poll and the Saudi nationals that we spoke to, 95% of affluent 18 to 34-year-olds think it is important to support and engage with Saudi-first enterprises and celebrate local craft and design.
Yeah, so if you think about how many people know terms like K-pop, you know,
As in
K-beauty,
Korea.
as in Korean. Well, now we're seeing A-beauty as an Arab beauty. So it's not just a trend that's happening locally. You're seeing it boomerang into the fashion industry globally as a consequence of optimism and opportunity happening here. So you've got to see the ripple out effect. And with that, you will see local brands, local designers, local artists, when I say local, Riyadh, suddenly becoming world famous. That's the next stage of the development we're looking forward to.
Finally, we couldn't go through a presentation without talking about tech, so we're looking at what we've called the Great Tech Acceleration, which is really how we start to see the continued widespread adoption of e-commerce, of fintech, of buy now, pay later services, the rising interest in cryptocurrency, all of these obviously appropriately catering to a tech-savvy luxury consumer. But our engagement with tech, I think, is continuing to change. It's moving away from the idea that it's simply about being able to be accessible, digitally accessible, to this idea of what we've called the phygital revolution, which is the seamless integration of the physical and the digital coming together. And for us, this trend is really, really evident already.
Yeah, and you know, again, we need to look at how we define luxury. A lot of people say it's about quality, it's about craftspersonship, etc. But actually, in our survey, again, 41% of Saudi luxurians said it was about the seamless integration of technology into the luxury product. Again, that was so high compared to 30% in Paris, 20% in London, 15% in places like Germany and Italy. So it's a really interesting, again, shift. Different language, different conversation, different expectation.
A great example that we've already seen here in Riyadh was, of course, during the Riyadh season, where NFT cards were introduced, non-fungible tokens as the access card to enable you to get your access and your entry throughout the season to the Boulevard Riyadh City and to Boulevard World, which, of course, were the two key festival entertainment zones throughout the program there. Well, just to conclude in the time that we've got left, I wanted to share with you this quote from one of our other experts, from Mark de Kuchinis, who is, of course, the CEO at Boutique Group. Because as we can start to see, the stage really is set for Saudi hospitality to emerge.
Okay, look at that quote. If you're going to photograph something, this is the one to photograph. The luxury sector was built on an understanding of European hospitality. The revolution that followed was Asian, how we all remembered and how we profited from that shift. But now it is the time for Saudi hospitality to become the new luxury benchmark and set the global standard. If I'm putting investment in now, that's where I'm putting it. That's the point about those shifts we are seeing. Seismic, consequential, and hugely about these kind of moments.
So, with its rich culture, its burgeoning economy and progressive initiatives, Saudi Arabia is poised to redefine luxury hospitality, inspiring innovation and setting a new paradigm for the industry worldwide.
Okay, if you wish to have a copy of the report, you can copy the QR code and download it. And of course, myself and Chris and the team will be about to answer any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you, Martin. Thank you very much indeed.